Billy. I run Open Books, a poem emporium, and we are absolutely delighted to be partnering with Amber to celebrate their incredible new collection and all of the amazing artists that they're having on this tour, virtual tour that they're offering in anticipation of what we're excited about for their in-person event here at the store sometime in the fall. A little background on Open Books. We've been in business for more than 30 years and recently moved to Pioneer Square from our first home in Wallingford. We love in-store visits, we love online customers, and we're happy to see you whenever you come. You can find us online at openpoetrybooks.com or come say hi.
Welcome to this virtual series to celebrate my bestie, Amber Flame, and her new book, Apocrypha. Apocrypha is a love story to conjure up queer, non-gendered joy of biblical proportions with a lot of research and acrobatic wordplay. Today, Flame is joined by longtime friend and writing companion, Anastacia-Renee, a queer writer, educator, and interdisciplinary artist, speaker, and podcaster. Most recently, they authored Sidenotes from the Archivist. And now, for your literary enjoyment, here are Anastacia-Renee and Amber Flame to discuss all that research it takes to write these books.
Thank you, Anastacia-Renee, for joining me today for a redo, a retake, a rework, a reapproach. It's a Mercury Retrograde, and we got books. So thank you for finding time to do this again, because I have been looking forward to this conversation from the beginning. When I had this idea, I knew that I wanted to talk to you about this particular subject, because when I think of poets and research and the sort of learning path that people have put me on, I think of it starting with you. And so we're going to get into that. And I would love to talk about Sidenotes from the Archivist and your new work and where you're going with the new as well. Not share your secrets so much as as we continue to push, we learn something, we try something new, and then we end up being like, oh, I guess I'm writing a book. So we will get there, but I wanted to set up some context. So the idea of this virtual tour is if I had to do an elevator pitch for Apocrypha in one long sentence, what would it be? And so I was like, it's a love story, told in verse. No, it's a love story. Do I even have it? I don't even have it anymore. Let me see. I got my Canva up in just a moment. Remind myself what the fuck I'm doing. Okay. It's a love story to conjure up queer, non-gendered joy of biblical proportions with so much research and acrobatic wordplay. Okay. So I put that together. I play with it. I toyed with it. I've had a great conversation about writing fictional romance. I've had a great conversation about the idea of conjuring up. I love Rachel McKibben said, I'm not here for that joy shit. I'm here for vengeance. And I've been really ruminating on that. What does it mean what does that mean? Because we're supposed to love and light shit to pieces, essentially. And so I'm interested to I feel like that's a circle back that you and I will come to too. I think in your work, you've said before that joy looks a little bit different. So I want to revisit that. But yeah, and then, talking about queer non-gender joy and just this idea, I think somewhere around that time I did a reading and I realized that I'm writing towards I'm writing futuristic shit for my people. I'm writing futuristic shit for Black people and queer people, in which I'm trying to imagine the world I want to live in. I'm trying to imagine a love affair that I want to live. I want to experience, that I can believe in, is what I've been saying. And so this sort of idea of the book revealing itself back to me at this stage has been really, really beautiful as well. I think I came into publishing it, I started it before my mom died, and then my mom died and it got shelved. And then I got to go to Hedgebrook and I worked on it at Hedgebrook, and I've talked about the spell and the heartbreak and the grief and all the places I went to, or I came from to write this book. And then I've talked about the work I've done. And so when I first thought about talking with you, I wanted to talk about research. And I remember almost like, I was a bull, ram-headed young thing. And I was like, I could research. I could do a big ass project. I could learn some shit. And that's what I did with Apocrypha. Like I set out to prove a point. Like, I think we've talked about this too, being the kind of, writer where people are like, oh, you're a poet. That's nice. And you're like, no, like I put it's not just poetry. There's so much in it. And so at first I was talking about Apocrypha, like I wrote this to prove a point. I wrote this to prove I could do foreign poetry, that I could succeed at contrapunto. Like I played and had such a good time and learned so much. And I gave myself a master's level in foreign poetry to write this book. So that the etymological research, that really has for me a lot of resonance around your work, because when I met you 10 plus years ago now, and we performed together, the first thing I knew was how much was in your poetry, how much history, how much like tangential pop culture facts and pieces. Like you've always woven that into your work. And so when I think of a bitch getting obsessed about an idea and going down a rabbit hole and learning all the things, I think about some of the conversations we've had. All that to say, welcome. I don't thank you for teaching me to like research some shit and go find out.
Thank you for having me, and honestly thank you for seeing that. I still feel like the poetry genre doesn't get as much respect as it deserves in terms of the craft, the work, the research that it takes to like make a solid ass poem. And I think through the years I have had a great crush on what we are calling now documentary poetry and historical poetry, but we know writers like Audre Lorde were already doing documentary poetry before it was a thing. And we've talked about it before. I grew up in a household of research books and library books and science books, anatomy books, because my mom was a medical librarian and a phlebotomist. And so like the anatomy, the body was just like, yeah, normal. This is some normal stuff. Read the dictionary over summer. Of course. Isn't everybody reading the dictionary this summer?
That was me with the Bible.
And then taking things apart. I think all of that came naturally to me, but at first I didn't think it belonged. I didn't think it belonged in my poetry. So it took me a while to give myself permission to say like, oh my goodness, these ruminating questions that I have, I can answer those questions in my poetry, or I can freaking ask the question in the poem. And so that's kind of like a doorway for me. And two, I've said this to you before, feeling like the poem is never done. So I'm gonna lie and call it a suite or a series or give it a set of numbers or letters, because it's just, this subject is still there. It won't leave me alone. So I gotta keep writing about it. I gotta keep researching it. There isn't an end to whatever the subject is. And I know, which I don't know, I really don't share a lot. So it might be new to some of the viewers, but like, I know my Bible, okay? Don't go to war with me with the Bible, right? And so this idea, I love taking a turn with and through and about the Bible, and also AKA other sacred texts. So that's one thing that I love about Apocrypha, and one thing that I love about answer me. That's like when I took the biggest leap into like, I'm actually going to call this a psalm. I'm actually going to call it a prayer. Yes, I'm riffing from sacred texts and also doing like the research around it. Don't you find that it's never ending though?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's ever evolving, maybe. But I think that is, I was going to ask you actually two things. One, where I would love for you to speak a little bit of where that, like, sort of, you said answer me was sort of where you took a leap into something where you were going to call it by its name. But backing up a little bit, where do you feel like you changed into calling documentary poetry or whatever, like naming it for what it was? Where do you feel like the multi-genre, or that loosing into all the other things, where did that come for you?
Oh, for me, I actually published my essays first. I was a journalist first in San Diego, and I had this big old stack of hidden poetry that I thought was insignificant. And I had been a part of a group in Kansas City, Missouri called the Black Poets Collective. So I would share my poetry with that group, and when that group was doing readings and when we were touring or whatever, but in my mind I kept it all set. There was like a folder for poetry, and then a folder for my essays, and then a folder for my questions, and then a folder for if I think I'm writing a short story. And back then I was like, oh, here's a folder for my novel, which I'm never gonna write a novel, but I just always kept them separate. Because when I was emerging, it was a thing, you submit your work, they would be like, is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Is it poetry? There couldn't, as far as I was aware, for what I was doing, you couldn't mix genres. It was like a no to mix genres. And so I was writing the essays. I won the San Diego Journalism Press Club Award in 2003 for an article I wrote called War Torn, about being the child of a Vietnam vet with PTSD. And I started writing poems, secret poems about that. And even in 2003, I was thinking like, there's gotta be a way that I can merge these two genres. I feel different. I'm writing from different parts of my body, but the outcome is the same subject. So I think still it took a while, and I didn't really take a turn where I was like, oh, I'm a multi-genre writer. Oh, I can, mix it all. Oh, now I'm hearing the term interdisciplinary artist.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now other people are saying it's a thing. The Academy said it's a thing. If the Academy said it's a thing, then it must be okay for me to do the thing. So I feel like I made a hard shift by not saying I was a poet and declaring that I was a multi-genre writer or interdisciplinary writer or a hybrid writer around 2015. 2014, I was toying with I was like, yeah, I do art. Yeah, I write poetry. Yeah, I write some essays. Yeah, it was,
Well, now you have a place where, or now you're at a place, I would say, or I feel like Sidenotes is like where it's not separate. Even it's not just saying, oh, I do all these disciplines, but here is what it looks like to do them in collaboration and cohesion with each other, right?
Yeah.
So there's something, this is like, I was thinking as you were talking about it, it's like, right, I very much do multiple things. And there are certain things that I've combined, like I've done music and poetry together, like that's an easy combination. Or music, poetry, and video, like there's different ways in which I feel like I'm multidisciplinary. And now this interdisciplinary and the differentiation between the two is like when you're really successfully and with skill weaving two different disciplines into the same piece, not that you're able to do all the different things. Like you don't have folders anymore. It's now become the folder. So tell me about the folder a little bit. Tell me about this. Tell me about Sidenotes, or tell everyone about Sidenotes.
You're right. Sidenotes is the first publication where I feel like the genres don't have their own folder. They're all in the same folder, aka book. I still feel nervous about Sidenotes. I really have a hard time talking about it. I think it's so marvelous that you have your own like personal blurb for Apocrypha. If someone were to ask me what is my own personal blurb for Sidenotes, I don't know yet, you know? Sidenotes was born in March, you know, September, it'll be 6 months old. I'm still trying to process, but in Sidenotes lies an essay, and like there's a lot of nonfiction facts, there's poetry, you know, I'm messing with form within, so I'm messing with form within poetry, and there are essays, and there's nonfiction research notes, and there are lists, and there are quotes, and there's a thread of pop culture. Then I'm taking it all the way back. You gotta read the book, but there's an Aunt Jemima suite, you know, like it is the first time where I decided publicly, you know, and there's my art. It really, I'm holding my hands because I'm still I'm noticing I'm doing that, you know, we'll do that to you in the camera. It's the first time that I'm sort of saying to everybody, yo, like, here's what interdisciplinary documentary creative work looks like. I hope you enjoyed it. And also, you know, there's people that's like, someone told me straight up, they only read the side notes first, not anything else. And I was actually glad about that. I like that the book is becoming its own contrapuntal. Like you don't want to start at the beginning. You don't have to. You want to read all the side notes and work your way back. You can do that. You want to look at the episodes for a Black girl like a script. It is. Do that. So that's one thing that I love about throwing all the forms, all the parts of me into one book. But it's also pretty scary because you could lose readership. You know, there's diehard poetry lovers that are like, I really can't get with this essay. Tell me about it. You know, my whole beginning the intro is an essay. So I feel like I took a lot of risks throwing it all in the same folder and calling it a book. I don't know if that's
so
good or bad.
I mean, I think it's like I don't know that there is a good or bad. I don't think that there's a judgment on it. It's just I don't know. I want to know about like, so there's the archivist part of it, right? Where and we've talked about this before. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like where you position yourself kind of in the canon of Black queer life, and what we are doing to canonize it and to write the history that hasn't been spoken and all of those things, and to write the future that is also dark right now. You know, so like how do we write some brightness back into our joy? I'd love for you to speak a little bit about joy, and so it's just sort of like how you position yourself in this, like in the now. Who are you now? And like to get there, like for me, the reception to this book has been a surprise. So every time I do a reading, especially when I get to have a conversation and people ask questions, like the first thing that became really, really obvious is people want to talk about love. Like they want to talk about power dynamics. They want to talk about roles. They want to talk about how to think of a love that you can believe in. Like they were ready and interested in engaging in the question. And I've had to accept also that this is not the kind of book that Black people get touted for writing, that queer people get touted for writing. Like if I wrote about violence, then perhaps this would have been, this could have been a louder book. So I'm also like really embracing the ways in which opportunities have presented themselves because it's this kind of book and not that kind of book. And I also am embracing like how much it's fed me to be able to sit in this like fictional, this is not my story. These are not me. They, they of course have aspects that I relate to. And I've watched that fluctuate. And it's so interesting to have that conversation with people, the ones who are like, I'm like, are you a lover or a beloved? And they're like, oh, I'm both. Or, like, I would like to have, and don't you need both? And how it like just opens up a conversation. And so I've been allowing, my word for the year is curious. I've been trying to stay curious about what this book will bring up in conversation, what it'll bring up in reception. And so you talked a little bit about like readership and fear, and like that's definitely business hat Anastacia-Renee, but really getting back to that question of like, how has the reception been? What ways has this opened up opportunities for you that you didn't expect or know were going to come, that wouldn't have opened if you hadn't taken the risk? And like, what is the what for you now with this book and the one that you're working on next?
Just threw a lot at me.
I mean, these are just what came up as you were talking. I was like, oh, well, then what about this? And maybe I should have interrupted you, but I was like, okay, so let's do one at a time. So tell me about the reception. How's the reception been?
The reception.
I mean, don't you have another book deal? Sips coffee.
I got a 2-book deal. So it wasn't like I did one and then got another one. I had all at once a 2-book deal.
So this got you a 2-book deal because you had this one and now another one coming out. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
So
first
right. I got it.
So Sidenotes has already given you that. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Okay. I feel like Sidenotes is as if V and Forget It hooked up, had a kid, didn't necessarily plan for it, but they
doing the best they could.
We love this kid. I truly feel like that. And I also know that people who are in love with V are not in love with Forget It. And people who are in love with Forget It are like, I like it. V was nice, but like Forget It. Almost too different. I didn't do this. Just in gathering the research, it feels like people are they're in the Forget It camp or the V camp. So with Sidenotes, I thought those same people would just take their camps and then everybody would love it, right? Because I feel like I was, this piece of like some elements of Forget It, some elements of V, some elements of my essays. I just, in my mind, I felt like,
so in trying to please everybody, you please nobody. Is that what you're saying?
Pleasing me, but I thought like, surely these camps
would find resolution somehow.
But guess what?
People are shit. People are shit.
Yes. But the surprising thing was, who the F knew there was going to be a 3rd camp? I didn't think, I know it sounds, me saying it sounds completely ridiculous, but I honestly did not think there was going to be new people to Sidenotes. I just automatically assumed that like if you read those other books and you naturally gravitate towards Sidenotes, I didn't think that there would be new readers. I mean, I hoped there would be, but I didn't think there would be. So that is actually surprising. I didn't think people who had never read, didn't know anything about me would read Sidenotes.
That this was the entry to it.
never occurred to me that I would have a reading and somebody would be like, oh, I never heard of you, but who are you again? But I'm going to read this book. I just didn't, that wasn't part of the thinking. So that has been wonderful and surprising. What has been a little hard is that I think, I'm being very careful, I don't have coffee to sip. I think that some people are naturally more drawn to poetry that is positive
Oh.
or revolutionary without being sad.
Angry, perhaps, or indignant is good.
Like indignant, arrogant, and ends, you know, the lines end kind of like a modern we shall overcome kind of thing. I too love that work, but it is not the work that what I'm trying to say is I don't write that work intentionally because that's not what I want to talk about. I want to have my life, my personal life. I want to have my good time. My good time is my good time. I don't want to write about my good time. I don't necessarily want to write about happy things because that's mine. I want to just have that. I don't know if this makes sense. So
Interesting.
a
So
lot
that's
of my work tends to be like, these are the things that I feel like we are dealing with as a people, as queer people, as Black people, as feminists, as womanists. Like, here's the shit that we're dealing with. That makes me angry and other people angry, that keeps us awake at night. I want to write about that. I don't necessarily want to write about us all having a tea party in the grass looking at the stars. I think that's beautiful, but it's just not that is not what I gravitate to. And I feel like some readers, they're like, listen, the world is hard enough. I don't want to go sit on my couch and read about the Black girl being in a food desert. Like, yo, I live in a food desert and I respect that. But
yeah, I mean, I gotta say, like I said, it is so much nicer to not be talking about ghosts and the things that haunt me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like to be on some like, this is a fictional love story that I wrote, that I made up. So ain't nobody get hurt. As Kristen Miaris Young said, these aren't poems to make you cry. They're not gonna make you cry.
But you love it. And I don't love writing about sad or angry shit. Like I have some poems in there, like The Black Woman is an Altar. There are like seven poems that end well. But I just feel like Sidenotes, it is heavy. And I'm not sorry for that. But I don't know how it sits with other books that are Black and lighter. Let me put it like so I did, that's something that I had to consider. I'm writing about, but I've always written about heavy things.
Right.
And so I'm not gonna run from it. But when you talk about future, I'm working on a queer novella. Is it 130 pages of heavy? Absolutely not, because I have a sense of humor as a writer. In my plays, there's funny shit, but there's also heavy shit. So I am a person that needs to write about both, is what I'm trying to say. But I think Sidenotes, the light things, I feel sometimes get buried. There's a lot of light and humor in Sidenotes, but I don't think that it comes off right away, the lightness, the humor, because people are just like, damn. And I'm like, yeah, damn, but also, did you not have this 80s playlist? Like, come on. I think that there's a balance. And so that I wasn't surprised about. I just have been a little worried in terms of the reception, because it's just, I don't know if people recognize the balance. And also, I'm not going to apologize for writing about heavy things.
All right, tell me about joy. So what about joy?
Joy. There was a time when I would get so irritated when I would be doing an interview or out somewhere, and someone would be like, Anastacia, what's giving you joy? It's like, nothing. Why? Because you can't. You can't give me joy and you can't take it away. It's my birthright. Stop asking me what's giving me joy. You want to know what makes me happy. There are several things that make me happy. There are several things that make me feel fulfilled. There are several things that make me feel excited, but nobody can give me joy. And it's just like, for me, it's annoying, because then you also feel like, oh, everybody else can get this thing, but maybe I'm not doing it right. Then it's like, how, what does joy look like? Now we got a whole book, there's a whole joy phenomenon, which again, I enjoy people live their lives according to their personal and external definition of joy. Nothing you can give me is nothing you can take from me. So you got to stop asking me what's giving me joy. You want to know what makes me happy? I'll tell you 15 things that make me happy. And also, I can be sad. I can experience grief. I can experience anger and still have joy. So I think for me, that's where I differ a little bit. I mean, it's, slang has always been under the radar barometer for what's going on with us. It's no coincidence, we're saying, oh, that gives me life. We're trying to live. And I don't think people, for me, eating Cheetos does not give me joy. And it doesn't give me life.
It doesn't.
Yeah, Cheetos make me happy. I like to eat them. They're very crunchy, but it doesn't give me joy to eat Cheetos, right? And so I have had to work on just being okay that maybe I have an unpopular opinion or belief system around joy.
I mean, I think that's, there's something really powerful about what you're saying and how you're framing it as like, especially the birthright part. And I think that's what, to your point of like what you're writing now and what you're trying to imagine now for a future is not dependent on something bringing you joy, which is great because the world is a trash fire. So if you were hoping that the world was going to bring you some joy, then you might be hoping for a long time. Might be a little bit like believing in the return of the Messiah or, the rapture. Just saying, you might just be waiting for a while. Yeah. So speak more about like, what do you think, like, what is pulling you next? Like, I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm not really writing poetry. This is the year of launch and I'm exhausted. I'm so fucking tired. And so I have the product of a lot of things I've already written or produced or whatever that are coming to fruition this year. And I've allowed myself to be like, I don't have to write anything. And so I've been drawn more to prose. I've been really, really wanting to learn, like setting myself up. I did the Sealy challenge for the first time. I don't know that was the correct decision to make for August, but I made it and I made it. So I learned a lot just from reading so much. And I feel like I want to read. Like I just want to be in a reading absorption kind of place. And I believe prose is what's coming. Prose, more music for sure. I think there will be another album fairly quickly because I got ideas percolating and I want to write towards this canon. Huh?
Check my schedule.
Let me check my schedule somewhere soon. No, but like there's right. I got to launch the album, and I think that there will be. It won't be long before follow up. Something will be out.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think into like where I'm starting to feel creative, and realizing that there's a lot to learn. Like I think that I feel a lot more humble and aware of like the skills I don't have that other people, like as I said, I was trying to prove a point with Apocrypha, and I feel like I could do that with poetry because I had enough instruction. Like I had been doing it for a while, you know what I mean? Like I'd learned from other people, a lot of community instruction around poetry. And so like challenging myself to do the like academic thing with poetry was fun, and sort of, like thumb in the nose, thumb to the nose in the face of whatever.
In the face of yourself.
A challenge that only I accepted.
Yeah.
And now I don't feel that arrogant. I feel like I have a lot to learn about prose. I have a lot to learn about essay writing. I'm starting to like differentiate like who I'm really enjoying the prose of, and like start to look at it the way I look at poetry, or the way I would look at music, where, I can't listen to a non-singer sing. It gets harder and harder to keep my face together, like when it happens a lot. People be like, oh, and I sing a little bit, and I'm like, oh, do there's something to learn, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm starting to write prose, and I'm realizing I'm already wanting to back up and say I'm learning to write prose. Doesn't mean I'm not good at it, doesn't mean I don't have natural talent, doesn't mean it's not enjoyable what I've done. Just saying, like, I'm learning. I still have a lot to learn. So where are you like stepping into what you don't know or haven't done, and what's next for you, do you think?
I'm not stepping into anything that I haven't done, but I am leaning towards lengthier projects of what I have done. Like I'm completing a queer novella, and that is not the title. Y'all out there don't.
It might need to be a queer novella by Anastacia-Renee.
That's what it's called right now. Novella, and I'm purposely adding the A. It is a novella because it is not a novel, and it is short, but it's thick prose with a through line,
Yeah.
So that is, it's like in purely fiction. I am having so much fun with this queer novella, because I'm like, and now I don't even know what the main character's name is yet, but it's written,
It's like playing Barbie. You can make them do whatever you want. You're like,
yeah,
now kiss.
Now she's gonna do. Oh, so that I'm working on that, and I just finished last edits with Here in the Middle of Nowhere, which is coming out with Amistad in March, and that is it's like nothing I've ever published before. So that is a little bit. I don't think this book is a love child of any of my books. So that's both exciting and scary. It's multi-universe, parallel universe, drama, otherworldly, real world, chunky prose with some poetry.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to call it Afrofuturism, again, you know, I have different thoughts of what, and I know there is a real ass definition for Afrofuturism, but for me, if we're talking about futures, I believe there are so many futures happening all at once. And so I don't necessarily want to say that it's Afrofuturism. Somebody's future is in this book, and some people's pasts are in this book. So I wouldn't call it Afrofuturism. Some people may put it in the category, but I don't. I'm still. I don't think that I am. I don't think that I have achieved the Afrofuturism mastery yet.
Okay.
But this book does dabble with like Black futures, sure. And
Right.
it does state straight out that God is a Black woman. So I know that there's going to be who knows what people are going to say about this book, because I definitely say that's the premise of this book, is that God is a Black woman. So there's that's coming in March. And of course, another poetry book on deck. And a couple of plays. That's what but you know what? I'm always curious. That's one thing that gives me the obsessions in the research. I'm always curious. Little A is always basically like, what the hell's happening and why? What's happening and why? And then how did it happen? And then what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen now? What did happen? So I'm still curious and humble. I don't really think I'm an expert at any of it. I just really like to write, and I will keep doing it. I'm hella curious, and I too want to take a break and just read. But
Oh, I don't know about taking a break. I just mean like,
that's just
I'm not actively generating new writing on a regular basis at this point, because I'm actively traveling to and fro performing the thing I just put out. So, and making a film and performing with my band and the kid, and like, yeah, no, there's no break. There wasn't a break.
I would like to take a break. I would like to take a break because I'm doing all the things too. But and I imagine a break where I'm doing nothing but reading. But we both know me, and we know I will still be writing because I just write every day. But I do want to just take a break where I'm just doing like inhaling a lot of books and doing more research. I'm so curious, and I still have a lot to learn. But it's a weekly feeling, right? When you're thinking about being like, what is emerging writer? What is mid-year career? What is season?
Oh, yeah. I mean, more like who determines that? What is the metric? Yeah. What line did I cross, and who put it there?
Who put the lines there? Anyways, that's where I'm at, and that's what's coming up next for me.
Do you think little A would be surprised by how your life has turned out or what you're doing now?
Definitely. Little A had no idea that it could even be a thing to be a real writer.
I think that's the thing I'm enjoying the most about like this era of my life, is like how often I have curated an experience for myself in which I'm like, little Amber Flame could never even fathom how awesome their grown-up life is going to be. Like it would be like, what? We get to do what? We spent the evening dancing where, like, yeah, it's just been, I had that moment first when I did the Women in Blues series at Royal Room, where I was just like, everybody at the end, by the end, was like dancing to blues music, and I had sang, and like it was a bunch of good singers and good music, and I just like had this flash of like little me sitting in Arizona hoping that there was a life somewhere out there, because it certainly wasn't here. And like, was there any point? And I just like I think my life has become more and more full of those moments where I'm giving my child self something that I craved my whole life, you know, and didn't even know the name of.
I think little A too would be like, oh, all those notes I was taking, you know, about what the adults are saying, and catalog,
all those stories I cataloged,
saving all Polaroid pictures. I was archiving. Like I've always been that person, and I want to say to little A, see, like you did, like the work paid off. You did, you know, like you did something really cool with that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, I want to say thank you. You've given me more than enough time, and you rescheduled after the Mercury retrograde kerfuffle, which we should have known. So if you are listening to this or watching this, I just want to say thank you for being here, for paying attention to my brilliant friend, Anastacia-Renee. Check out their book, Sidenotes from the Archivist. It sounds like another one is coming next year, Here from the Middle of Nowhere. And more, of course, always. This is a generating motherfucker. So thank you, Anastacia-Renee, for being here, for trusting me. And the last event wraps up this Sunday with Arisa White moderating a conversation with Era D. Matthews. So I hope you will join us. Check out the rest of the playlist on YouTube. And thank you again, Renee. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much.